Jalen Jeremiah. So I remember he was so perfect. He had a little tiny button nose, 10 toes, 10 fingers. Um, I remember holding him in my arms and just smelling him, and he was just so tiny, little. I felt his cheeks, and it was so soft and velvety. That Sunday that I had him, I remember it was a very cold day, and it looked like it was going to rain. And I remember getting to the hospital anxious, very anxious, not knowing the outcome of the situation and how bad everything had turned. But I just remember holding him, and he was just so perfect. He was just like my son, just a tinier version of my son. And he resembled Michael a lot. He had his exact feet, the same toes, and he was just so little and just amazing.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Bianca, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And I'm just so impressed with right now your strength and your willingness to share Jalen with us today. So thank you for coming on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're kind of located, at least in the country, and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I am a medical claims analyst. I live in Massachusetts. I have two children. I have an 11-year-old daughter, Sanaya, and a 6-year-old son named Josiah. They are wonderful children. They were looking very forward to being, big brother, big sister, and we were just wanting to expand our family and grow and, become closer to one another.
And anything you guys like to do in your spare time as a family or as yourself? Like, what kind of hobbies do you have?
I like gardening. As a family, we tend to go on road trips. We take
Nice.
a lot of road trips every year to go somewhere new. So we do that together. We enjoy watching movies together and just going out and enjoying each other's company.
That sounds so fun. That's wonderful. And your husband is Michael, is that right?
Yes,
How long have you guys been together?
we've been together for 14 years.
That is awesome.
We've been together since we were 14.
Really?
Yeah.
That is awesome. So you guys were junior high school sweethearts?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. Well, and what area are you guys living in? Can you kind of just give me a Oh, did you guys already answer that? You guys probably answered that, didn't you?
Yeah, so we live in Massachusetts, not too far from Boston.
Awesome. Okay. And you guys have lived there in that area most of the time you've been together?
Yes, we both grew up here.
Okay, wonderful. And so, as to give a little bit of context for our listeners, can you tell us how long ago Jalen was born?
So Jalen was born Monday, February 1st of 2021, so a little over a month ago.
Yeah, it is so new for you guys. So, I thank you so much for coming on today. Tell me, so you've told us you have two other kids, and how did this particular pregnancy go compared to your other pregnancies that you've had?
This pregnancy was by far the best pregnancy I've ever had.
Really?
Yes, I've had no complications at all, no morning sickness. It was just like amazing. With my other two children, it was very complicated. I was sick all the time. I want to say for like all 3 trimesters, I was very sick. I couldn't really keep anything down, but this pregnancy was just different. I was able to eat. I was so happy. It was amazing. Like, I really didn't think this would be my outcome
Yeah.
based on how amazing this pregnancy was to me.
Right.
Um, yeah, he was a very good baby. I didn't have any type of aversions, food aversions, anything like that.
So really good pregnancy. Oh man.
Mhm.
And were you guys planning on having Jalen then? Was that a planned pregnancy?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So and no, did you guys have any issues getting pregnant or was it pretty standard?
Yeah, so we actually became pregnant after 2 months of trying. I was on the birth control and then we decided to come off. And 2 months after I came off, I got pregnant with him. We had a positive on September the 28th.
Oh wow. That's awesome. So no issues and it was kind of one of those things where it just kind of worked out, right?
It did, yes.
Yeah. That is that's so frustrating when you're like, this is not what I was expecting it to be though. So tell me a little bit about how things progressed then. So you guys found out in September of 2020 that you were pregnant and everything was going really well with the pregnancy. Sounds like you were quite comfortable and excited and your kids were excited, you guys were excited. So that's wonderful. And none of the all the medical checkups and everything, how did those go? Was there any sort of indication that anything was there was any issue?
And no, so every thing was fine. All my appointments were perfect. I had my appointments, my checkups. Baby was growing, very healthy. Everything with me was fine. I was feeling good. It was up until my 20-week anatomy scan. Actually, it was before my 20-week anatomy scan. So I ended up going to the hospital for a checkup after Christmas. They wanted to see me every 2 weeks because of my history with both my two previous pregnancies. My son was a preemie and he was born at 32 weeks.
Okay.
And so they were concerned as to whether or not I would go into labor early this pregnancy. So they wanted to monitor that very closely ahead of time so that they would be able to detect once my cervix started to dilate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going in for my checkups every 2 weeks. Um, I had went on January the 12th for that was the beginning of that 2 week period they wanted me to start going. And so when I had went to that appointment, they did a cervical scan. It's basically to see if my cervix started to dilate at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they checked the baby and he was fine, growing healthy. At that appointment, everything was fine when I was there. It was 2 days later, I had got a phone call from my midwife, and she said that she noticed my cervix had started to funnel. So I really wasn't sure what that had meant, but she basically said that if you look at a funnel, the way that a funnel is shaped,
Mm-hmm.
now how it has like a narrow end, and then the top of my cervix, basically the baby was starting to push down.
Okay.
So eventually my cervix would start to open.
Mm-hmm.
So she noticed that it began to funnel, and they wanted me to basically they wanted to go over my options on whether or not I wanted to take progesterone shots or if I wanted to get a cerclage put in place. And basically what the cerclage does is it's like a stitch that stitches your cervix shut. And then it's supposed to prevent preterm labor. So I had told her that I wanted to talk to my husband, and I had an appointment coming up 2 weeks later for January the 26th. And I wanted to, think about it and then let her know at that appointment whether or not I wanted to do either the cerclage or the progesterone shots. At that appointment on the 26th, that was my anatomy scan. So they did the anatomy scan. they checked the baby and everything first, and he was fine. I actually got some ultrasound pictures where he was actually smiling
Oh,
for us.
oh, that is wonderful.
Yeah, so that made me happy. And then she checked my cervix and she was pushing. I remember her pushing on my stomach, and I can see because I have the screen in front of me, and she was pushing on my stomach. And as she was pushing, I seen something like was like an opening. Every time she would push, I would see an opening. So I was like, "Is that my cervix?" And she had said, "Yeah, you see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's really weird." And it was opening really big. So I got scared, and she had stepped out and said she was gonna go get one of the high risk doctors to come in. So she had left, and at that point, I didn't think anything of it because I'm like, the baby was fine, and heart rate was good, and he was moving around, and he was doing everything he was supposed to be doing for his gestational age.
Great.
So the doctor had came in, and they told me at that point I needed to go over to the hospital to get an emergency cerclage put in because I was beginning to dilate,
Oh,
and eventually he would come. So I was nervous about that. And I remember calling Michael. Michael was at work that day, and I was like, I don't want to do surgery. So I had went over to the hospital, and they didn't actually do it that day. They ended up scheduling it for 2 days later. So I had the surgery done on the 28th of January, which was a Thursday.
okay.
So that Thursday, I went to the hospital. They put me to sleep. I was under general anesthesia. And I remember the doctor that I had, it was just not a good experience. I felt like the communication was very off. So
Really?
I had a ton of questions, and I felt like my questions aren't really being answered as they should have.
Yeah.
And at the time, Michael wasn't able to come in because of COVID. I had to
Mhm.
go by myself. So I got dropped off to the hospital, and I remember just being frightened, and I had questions, and I felt like my questions weren't really being answered. So they gave me the IV, and I was getting wheeled into the operating room. And I remember they were telling me that I would fall asleep soon because the drugs that they were giving me was supposed to make me go to sleep for the procedure.
Mhm.
And I remember the doctor saying, "Oh my gosh, Bianca, this is going to be very risky." And I was trying to get my words out to ask what's going on, but I felt myself going to sleep because they had gave me the medication already. So I remember waking up in the recovery room, and I was like, "Is my baby okay?" And they were like, "Yeah, the baby's okay." But it was very risky because the membranes were beginning to come down into
Oh.
my vagina.
Mhm.
And so they had to basically push it back up and then stitch it. So it was risky because during the process, there was a potential risk that he would break my water on accident. So luckily, everything was fine. Surgery and everything was a success. I waited at the hospital for a couple hours until I was able to recover. And then my mom came to the hospital to pick me up and brought me home. So that was on a Thursday. So the Friday, I remember being in so much pain. I
Because of
didn't
the
think it was
surgery?
normal because of the surgery. So I thought.
Oh, okay.
Um, I thought it was because of the surgery. I was bleeding, which they said would be normal because they tampered with my cervix. So, and they said that the pain was normal because, they were messing with my cervix as well. And so I remember saying to Michael, "I'm in so much pain, I'm cramping." And I had my previous son naturally, so I knew what the contractions felt like, and
Mhm.
it very much felt like contractions to me. And I remember calling the doctor, and I was explaining what I was feeling, and they were telling me, "Oh no, that's normal. Just take a Tylenol, you'll be fine." I had a checkup that Tuesday. So I was just like, "Okay." And I ignored it, took the Tylenol and I ignored it. And Saturday came, and I'm just like, I don't feel right. And I had called the doctor again, and they had prescribed some type of medication that's supposed to stop the contractions that I was having.
Mhm.
And I remember reading the back of the medication, and I was like, this says not safe to take in pregnancy. So I was iffy about taking that. I was very iffy, and my doctor reassured me that it was completely safe. He said he gave me a low dose and that it would help with the contractions that I was experiencing. So I took the medication, even though I had doubts from the beginning about taking it. I took that, and then Sunday, everything just went downhill Sunday.
Mhm.
My contractions were more intense. I started to feel a lot of pressure. And I remember saying to Michael, like, should I go back to the ER and get evaluated? And he was like, make sure you call your doctor first. Call the doctor, see what the doctor says. And I remember calling the doctor. This was the same doctor that did the surgery. And he was just like, oh, I don't think anything is wrong, but you can come in and we can evaluate you and see what's going on. So I remember going, and I had to go by myself again because of COVID. And I had got there and I could barely walk. It was so intense that I can barely even stand up straight and walk because the pain was just, it kept coming very intense, very strong and quickly.
Mhm.
So they checked me in, and I remember going to um, the back of, where they call you in to assess you and all that stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then the nurse was talking to me and she was asking what type of pain I was feeling. And she wanted me to change into a Johnny and sit down on the stretcher that they had there. And I remember telling her, like, I can't even take my clothes off. Like, I'm in so much pain, I can't even take anything off. And she helped me. And I remember another nurse came in and they were going to do like a speculum exam just to see like what was happening. So they did that. And I remember usually speculum exams hurt a lot for me.
Mhm.
And I remember they put the speculum, but it was barely in. And they both looked at each other. And then they said that they had to call the page a doctor. So I was very scared. And I had turned to the nurse and I was like, is everything okay? And she was like, well, the stitches came out and your water sac is right here. Like it's right there. And I'm like, no, like it can't be there because I was only 20 weeks and 6 days that Sunday. I was going to be 21 weeks the following day. And I was just like, no, this can't be. And so I was like, can you please call my husband? So she was like, yep, you're going to be admitted. Um, the doctor came down. So the doctor was very blunt. He came to the room and he said, you're 20 weeks and 6 days. We're going to have to admit you and get this baby delivered. There's going to be zero to little chance of survival for him because of his gestational age. So I remember saying to him, like, please hold, please just wait. And I'm like, even if he comes this early, is there any way that the NICU can, like, help him out or like even get involved? He said no, because babies that little don't have a chance of survival. And the NICU will not step in until a baby is at least 22 weeks. So even though he told me all of that, I remember just being there and I was in like a state of shock.
Yeah.
Like, this can't be my life right now. Like, there's no way. I didn't want to believe it. And for some reason, I had like some hope that what he was saying, like he was wrong. And I remember the nurse had came back and she's like, we called your husband. He'll be on his way. And I remember Michael sent me a text and he was like, what's going on? And I just couldn't even respond to him because I didn't know myself. For some reason, I was just like completely numb. So I was completely numb to the situation and I just didn't want to believe it. So after that, they brought me upstairs. Michael came and the doctor was explaining to Michael everything that was going on. I felt very alone in that moment and felt very defeated.
Yeah.
I went upstairs and I got admitted, and everything just happened so quickly. This was like on a Sunday afternoon as well. Everything just happened so quickly. And they had to take the stitches out before I could deliver because they didn't want it to interfere with the labor process.
Mhm.
So I remember I didn't want an epidural and I didn't want to take any drugs I wanted to feel everything. You know what I mean? Like, because I wanted to remember him and I didn't want to be completely numb. I knew at that moment I was emotionally numb, but I didn't want to be completely numb to the situation. They took the stitches out and that was a very painful process for me. Took about 20 minutes. For some reason, my water was still intact. So I was so hopeful that maybe they can take the stitches out and I can be on bed rest.
Mhm.
Like maybe they can keep me in the hospital and I can stay here and everything can work out. Maybe I can get to 22 weeks where they can possibly save him.
Yeah. Did the doctors give you any sort of it was
No,
eh, there
no.
was no hope. They basically said there was nothing
I
they
f-
could do.
I felt like they pretty much just wrote him off at that moment. From the time I was in the ER, I felt like they pretty much just wrote him off. Like she's gonna deliver and that's gonna be it. I don't feel like they've done everything they could have. I felt like the doctor that I had was very harsh. When he was taking the stitches out, I wanted him to be careful because I knew that my water was right there,
Mhm.
like the bag was right there, but he was just so rough. And I remember he put like a some object that looked like a hook to like pull the stitch out. And I just remember this warm sensation falling down my leg. And I'm like, did you break my water? Did it break? And everybody in the room just got quiet and I just started bawling. After that, they gave me some medication to get my labor started to progress. And I delivered Jalen on that Monday morning at 1:13 in the morning. Labor was very intense, very much real and painful. I had no desire to push because I just wanted to be pregnant for as long as I could be pregnant. And so I wanted to stay pregnant for as long as I could. I remember having this nurse by my side. She was very amazing. She was like an angel sent from above. Like she stood by my side the whole time. She rubbed my back. She laughed with me, cried with me. Uh, she was just so amazing and made the process and my experience so much more special. Um, not once did she leave me at all, and I just felt like she was like a mom to me in that moment. Um, I remember pushing him out. I was like on all fours, and I just it was so difficult for me. I had no desire to push because I wanted him to stay in. I felt like he was safe in there. He was safe with me, and then once he came out, it would just be over with. And that's the part that I struggle with the most. I remember him coming out, and I took that last and final push, and he came out, and just the room was quiet. I couldn't see him because, again, I was on all fours. And I remember turning to the nurse. I was like, is my baby okay? And she looked at me and she said, he has no pulse. I had turned around and sat down. And she wrapped him in a blanket and handed him to me. And he was so perfect. I remember giving him a kiss on his cheek and telling him how much I loved him and how much I was sorry because I felt like my body failed him. I had so much plans for him. I was prepared. It hurts me so bad because I will never get to see his eyes. I will never get to hear his cry or feel his little fingers wrapped around my finger. Throughout it all, like, the worst experience was, of course, the labor, but saying my goodbyes to him at the hospital and leaving him there, knowing that I was going home and not being able to take him with me, and being on a labor and delivery ward with other pregnant women, that get to see their babies. And I had to leave mine behind. He did have like a little bruising on the left side of his cheek. And they did say that it was because the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so once my water had broke, with every contraction that I was having, it would constrict and get tighter around his neck. I feel like I feel like I just let him down. Like my body failed. And this is like a baby that we both wanted, we both agreed on, we both were so happy about. The kids were so happy to have him, and then having to explain that he's not going to be here anymore really broke me down. Especially with my 6-year-old, having to explain to a 6-year-old that was so excited that he was going to have a brother, that he's not going to physically be here with us. It was hard to explain. Shortly after I delivered him, we decided to go home that day. It was a very bad snowstorm, and I didn't want to stay in the hospital. They did say I can stay for 2 days. And I remember saying, no, I don't want to stay here anymore. I have to leave. I kept seeing pregnant women. I kept hearing babies crying in the hall, and I just wanted to leave.
Mm-hmm.
They did ask me how I wanted everything to go in terms of Jalen, and I told them that I would reach out to a funeral home because I did want to have a service for him. The hospital said that they do a program basically where they would dispose of his body, and they would dedicate a plaque in a cemetery hereby. And at that moment, I was just like, you know what? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in charge of what I did with him, with his body, and I don't feel like we're gonna stay in Massachusetts much longer. We do
Mm-hmm.
plan on relocating soon, and I would feel so guilty of not being able to, have his remains with us and having him here in a cemetery where I wouldn't be able to visit. And I just felt very terrible about it. And so we both agreed to get a funeral home that we both were familiar with. They picked him up from the hospital. We ended up getting him cremated, and we have his ashes in a urn in our room that we keep close to us. We created a memory table for him. It has like his pictures around and his teddy bear that he was holding at the hospital, and we have his blanket. We created a memory box for him with a pregnancy test and first ultrasound pictures, and his blankets, his teddy bears, that the blanket he was wrapped in,
Mm-hmm.
and the teddy bear he was holding, and the first outfit that we both bought for him. And so we have a lot of pictures that we took in the hospital that we're able to look back on. I ended up getting those printed out and put that in his memory box. I'm so grateful that the nurse offered to do like a little photo shoot for him.
Oh, wonderful.
So yeah, she was able to get like professional pictures done for us that we have to look back on. She got him dressed up. She put on this really cute outfit on him. It was like a little baby blue shirt, and she wrapped him up in a little Winnie the Pooh blanket where he had a baby blue knitted hat on to fit him because he was so tiny.
Yeah.
He was 10.5 inches long, and he was 11.5 ounces. So he
Oh,
was like very tiny. I was able to hold him in my hand,
yeah, little.
and he was so tiny. Um, and I was just grateful to have those pictures to look back on. You know, I really encourage pictures, taking pictures, because in that moment, I didn't want to take pictures,
Yeah.
but I'm glad that we did, because now, like, we have pictures of three of us. And it's something that I cherish and look at every day. We had a funeral service, and the kids were able to see him for the first time there. They were able to finally process it, seeing him physically.
Did you end up calling or letting your kids know what was happening when you guys were at the hospital? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so Michael ended up calling my daughter, and she kind of knew when I had left to go to the ER the night before. She knew something was wrong, and when she noticed that Michael had to leave out, um, he had to end up bringing the kids to my mom's house,
Mm-hmm.
and said that he had to go to the hospital with me. I told her that, and she knew, because she was texting me, "Is everything okay?" And I wasn't responding because I didn't want to worry her. But he let her know that this is what's happening. Baby's not going to make it. And she, at that moment, she had broke down, which broke me down even more. My son was just, he didn't understand.
Yeah. At the funeral, so they got to meet him. And was it just your family? Did any of your other immediate, like your mom, was she able to come and see him and meet him?
Yep, so we had a more intimate service. It was just like
Immediate family.
immediate family,
That's good.
and
Some friends.
yeah, really close friends. Michael had two friends, and I had my two close friends. And they did it where they had us come like an hour earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So me, Mike, and the kids. And so we had our time, our one-on-one time, where we, can have the kids process everything and see him and ask any questions they needed to ask.
How did they take it?
My daughter was very hurt. My son was upset. I remember he had said, "You guys promised I would have a brother." And that was hard to explain to him, like, you still have a brother. He's
Mhm.
just not here. He has to be with God now in heaven, and he's watching over us. He didn't understand that concept.
Yeah.
Um, he didn't understand why he had to go. And it was hard for me to explain to him why he had to go as well. Um, because I still struggle with that till this day. But you know, he goes up to his urn, and he'll talk to the urn, and he'll pick it up, and I'm like, "Wait, put that down." So what I did was, I went out to Build a Bear,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up getting them a teddy bear, both of them. And one has his heartbeat from the ultrasound
Mm.
in the arm. And so we had a ton of clothes that we had purchased. We were preparing, buying things little by little. And I remember putting Jalen's onesie on the teddy bear. And so he'll go and he'll push the teddy bear and hear the heartbeat, and it plays a song, which is a song that we played in the funeral. Um, it's so he'll go, he'll hug it, he'll play it, and every now and again he sheds a tear, and he'll say, "I miss Jalen," and I'm like, "Yeah, I miss him too." It's very hard. He has his days where one day he's fine, and then the next minute he's breaking down. My daughter as well. Um, she has her days where some days it's easy for her, and then some days she's hugging her teddy bear and looking at his pictures.
It's so hard for the siblings. It's yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why you guys named him Jalen? Is that a family name? Is that just a name you guys have really liked?
We were throwing like what seemed like 1,000 names out. We probably said about 1,000 names, and 999 of them were getting swatted by each other.
That's always what happens.
Yeah, so I guess Jalen came up, and we both finally agreed, and we stopped at that, because if not, we would have just kept going. But
So it's just one.
I really like the name Jeremiah, which is his middle name, because my daughter's name is Sanaya, my son is Josiah, and then Jeremiah. So you get the ring.
Oh, there's a definite pattern. I like it.
So I love the name Jeremiah. Josiah is also a biblical name, and so is Jeremiah. So I really wanted to keep that going, as well as Michael. So I'm like, we'll have all the boys in the house will have a biblical name. And Michael was like, I just don't like that for a first name. So he first we mentioned Jaden. And I'm like, I don't like Jaden too much, because we have family members named Jaden. So I was like, what about Jalen? And so my mom's name is Julene. And so she was like, yeah, Jalen, that's perfect.
She's like, yes.
So we ended up naming him Jalen Jeremiah, and we both agreed to that. And so
it's got a nice rhythm. It's got a nice rhythm to it. I really like it a lot.
Thank you.
So you guys have a nice little kind of a memory wall, a memory box for Jalen. Is there anything that you guys, what other things that you did during the delivery and even at the internment? Is there anything that you wanted to do that was really special that you wanted to kind of remember him by? It sounded like you guys had a special song that you played for him too during during the funeral.
Yeah, so we played Surrender by, I think her name is Natalie. So we played that song, and it's a really heartfelt song. My sister created a slideshow for us that we played at the funeral as well. So it had like the moment we found out we were pregnant with the pregnancy test. So we got those on camera. We were able to throw in his first ultrasound, where they confirmed that, there was a little Bean. That was his nickname. We've all called him Bean. And our announcement photo, we announced our pregnancy on Christmas Day.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so that was exciting. And for us, everyone found out on Christmas Day, and I couldn't hide it anymore at that point. It was like either I told them on Christmas Day, or they're gonna just wonder what's going on, because my stomach was starting to poke out too much. And usually, like, Valentine's Day passed. So he was born February the 1st, and Valentine's Day came. So what we did was go out and we bought a card, and it was like a card for like a loved one that's far away. And so I bought him a card and wrote everything I was feeling at that moment in the card for him. And I think I want to keep that going on holidays, like include him and stuff like that, and continue to talk about him, and plan for different milestones that he would have reached. With our due date coming up, I know it's going to be very challenging for us, but I want to do something in remembrance of him on that day. Whether it's like go out and do something in memory of him, or like do a balloon release. I know at the end of the funeral, we went up to the park close by our house, and we all we wrote on a balloon, wrote him a message, and we did a balloon release and let it go for him.
That's awesome. That's a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Send him a message, right?
And I think he sends us a lot of messages too, because I I don't really I can almost feel his presence with me.
Mhm.
Um After I gave birth, I still feel like I'm pregnant. Like, even sometimes I'll sit here and I feel like I can still feel him kicking. It's like, it's so weird to me because it's like, I'll look at Michael, I'm like, I feel pregnant. Like, I feel like he's here. My stomach, I can feel him moving. Like, it's the weirdest thing. And I remember one day I was crying and I just wanted him, just couldn't understand why I wanted him here so bad. And my TV just shut off. Or I'll come across like a name. I'll be working because I work from home,
Mhm.
and I'll come across a name of a patient, and it's Jalen. And it's just like, my baby is trying to like talk to me,
Uh,
let me know that he's okay.
yeah, I was
So
gonna
it's
say
just like,
he shows up
I
every
feel
so
like,
often. That's fun.
yeah, I feel like he's trying to let me know. It's so weird. But I do I do try to like talk about him, and I feel like it helps me a lot to like continue to talk about him and share his story. And I just wish that some days I wish I had the chance to tell him how much I loved him and how much he was wanted and how much we all needed him, especially me. I felt like I really needed him at this moment in my life. And I wanted him more than anything. If I could have done anything to save him, I would have, without a doubt. The moment I hit my second trimester, it was on game. Like, I started going shopping. We had Michael put his crib up. We got the stroller, the car seat, the clothes, everything. We got everything but diapers and formula. So that was hard.
Yeah.
That was very hard.
Yeah.
I remember the day that I ended up leaving the hospital, I said to Michael, can you get somebody over the house and take that crib down and take the car seat and take the stroller and just get it out? Because
Yeah.
we had his nursery set up, and I didn't think I could come back home to that all being there still.
Yeah.
Um, I ended up getting dropped off to my grandparents' house, and Michael had called somebody and they took the crib out. We ended up donating it to a women's shelter. And I kept his clothes. The only thing I did keep was his clothes. I haven't gotten the courage just yet to get rid of any of his clothes. They're all still packed away in his drawer.
Yeah.
As far as like everything else, we got rid of all the big stuff that I just wanted to go, because I didn't think I had the courage to walk into his room and see all that stuff there, knowing that he wouldn't be here with us and he wouldn't be using any of this. And it was his stuff. And it just broke me down to even think about going home and all his stuff was set up and ready for him, and tore me apart. So I did tell Michael to take that down, put the dresser with his clothes in it, leave the dresser. Everything else, you can take it.
Yeah.
The stroller and the car seat, we didn't throw away the box, so we were able to take that back.
Good.
And I just wanted it gone.
Yeah.
I still have his clothes that I plan on keeping until it's the right time. I don't think it'll ever be the right time, but it gives me comfort being able to look at them, and it gives me, it's a part of him, something that we bought for him. So I don't really feel comfortable just giving it away just yet.
Yeah. And you should hold on to it as long as you need to, because you know what, you might need to your kids might need to dress up their Build-A-Bears in a onesie or two. So
Yeah.
now, is there
So,
anything else you would like to tell me about his birth, or anything that you want to remember him about him?
um, oh yeah. So the hospital has a program, or like a support group, called Empty Arms.
Mm-hmm.
And so they reached out to the organizer of the program, And I remember while I was in the hospital, she reached out to me, and I remember just looking at my phone, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. I can't explain anything about what just happened. I don't even want to talk about any of this right now. So I ignored her for a couple of days, and she kept reaching out, and eventually I opened up and I let her in, and she has like some volunteers that go to the hospital and they'll do things for the baby, which I'm so grateful for that. They were able to make us castings of
Oh, great.
Jalen's hands and his feet. So I do have that with his footprints and his hands to look at and have like a visual. That helped me a lot in this grieving process. Every now and again, I'll go in that box and I'll pull out the castings and I'll like rub his feet and just look at them and look at his little toes and his hand. They were balled in a little fist. I just look at those and I'm just grateful that I had that and that support group. They do have meetings where I'm able to like have like virtual meetings with other moms that went through the same thing, and we're able to share our experiences, and I feel like it helps a lot to know that like you're not alone in this situation.
Yeah.
And before this happened to me, I never really thought about this like until it happened. Like I knew this kind of stuff happened, but I didn't know it happened like this. Or,
Yeah.
like I hear other stories and stuff, and it's just like, wow, it's so, yeah, the emotions are so raw and so real. I've had other loss in my life, but nothing compared to this type of loss. This type of loss was something that I felt like it hit me deep down.
Yeah.
Like, I know every loss is painful, but this type of loss was something that was just, I felt like I lost a part of myself the day that I lost Jalen. And I don't feel like I will ever be that Bianca that I was in September of 2020 when I found out I was pregnant. I would never be that person again. The day that I lost him, I lost myself. Like he took a part of me with him. And I feel like that's the saddest part, because I really, I had so much hopes for him. I planned for everything. When you lose a baby, you not only plan for the baby, but you plan for their future, and you plan for, you know, their first solid food and the first walks and all that. And I won't get to experience any of that with him. Um,
Yeah, it is. It's devastating.
but yeah, I was definitely grateful to have the momentums that I did get for him, and the pictures that I do have that I cherish every day, and you know, trying to carry on his memory and by creating that memory table. And we both have necklaces in remembrance of him. And so we wear this every day. I haven't taken this off at all.
Yep, I know who you're talking about. Yep, that's what you do.
Yeah, so
I think
that's
that's
my little bean.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing his birth story with me today. I know it's not an easy task to do that, but I hope that it has helped your heart, and I hope it has. Well, you'll have this memory of it with you. So thank you again, Bianca, for coming on today, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.